In the spirit of Halloween, paranormal or not, what is the scariest, creepiest or most unsettling experience of your life? When I was about 9, my family lived in the city above an auto repair shop where my father worked as a spray painter. Our studio or whatever was the second floor but high enough to meet the third floor of other buildings. One night I awoke to tapping at the window. I woke my 2 younger brothers up who shared the room at the time in a hysterical panic, saying there's something trying to get in. They were tired and for a second didn't believe me, but then it started again. We all freaked out and jumped under one of our covers and started crying our eyes out as the tapping turned to banging. After a minute or two that felt like eternity, my dad comes in and tells us to shut the hell up and go to sleep. The banging happened again and my dad, calm as fuck, just walked over to the window and opened the curtain. There was my then 17-year-old brother. He'd climbed the scaffolding outside that was being used to work on the face of the building because he'd snuck out earlier and couldn't get back in, and thought he'd be able to get in undetected if he could get our attention. Not a great story, but it's probably the most scared and confused I've ever been. Well, the creepiest thing just happened to me 2 days ago. 4 days after we moved to a new house, I misplaced my phone. I use my mother's phone to call my phone and find it. My phone is always on silent vibrate mode, so it took me 4 missed calls to finally find my phone. I forgot that I left it on the floor next to the main door when I was putting the shoes on the shoebox. The creepy thing starts and ends at the first call that I made to find my phone. Normally after a few rings the operator would come up and say that the phone I am calling is unreachable and to leave a message after the beep or something like that, so I was waiting for it to make my second call, but after just a few rings on my first call the ringing stopped, almost like someone answered the call. I looked at my mom's phone and saw that the time is running, which means someone picked up the call and that I am talking to someone. I quickly put the phone back to my ears and then I heard the creepiest unhumanly whisper-like sound that I have ever heard in my life. It only lasted a few seconds, then went quiet but did not hang up the phone. The call was still running, so I asked, "Hello, who is this?" "Hello," but there was nothing but silence, so I hang up and called again. This time after a few rings the operator comes up and said the things they usually say. I tried calling 2 more times but it is back to normal and nothing weird from usual happened before I found my phone. Then I looked at my phone and there was 4 missed calls and 1 voicemail. I listened to the voicemail expecting for it to be my voice where I was saying, "Hello, who is this? Hello?" But no, the one that was on the voicemail was the exact same creepy voice/sound that I heard trying to call my phone. I have the voicemail saved for anyone curious, just do not know how to upload. I was always the skeptical, still am. I was not creeped out at the time, I am more like excited, and with a huge smile on my face I told my mom that something someone might call paranormal happened to me for the first time. I am still amazed about this until someone can debunk this experience, of course. Waking up in the hospital one night with my hands in oven mitt looking things and my wrists tied to the sides of the gurney. I had been in an induced coma following a car crash, brain surgery and other procedures, and I didn't remember any of it. I asked a nurse who came by where I was and why. He answered, then got on the phone to my mom. He's back. But think about that for a moment. I wake up, highly medicated, with no idea what put me in that situation. For the hour or 2 that followed, I kept trying to finagle my way out of the gloves as if to make an escape. Didn't happen. When I was 5 years old, my family and I were coming home late one night after a New Year's party. It was my father, mom, sister and I walking up the stairs to our front door. My father was carrying me as I was on the verge of passing out. My mom enters the house first with us directly behind her. All lights were off and all you see is an outline of a very tall man standing in the hallway, walking towards us. My mom screams, "There is someone in the house." At that moment, the man ran to the basement stairs so he can escape from the basement window he entered from. At that time my dad put me to the ground and ran outside to catch him from crawling out of the basement window. My mom's sister and I ran outside and see my father chasing the man down the street as we all scream for help. My dad didn't catch him unfortunately, but that night still creeps me out till this day. Was hiking in the woods on an unusually foggy afternoon. Was not on a trail, just walking through the trees and brush. Suddenly heard a howl/screech that I like to accept as being from a mountain lion, but to this day I'm still unsure as to what could have made that sound. It was so bizarre. The hairs on my body were standing up and my heart was in my throat as I reached down to pick up a solid stick to use as a club if necessary. I walked about 20 feet further before realizing the stick I was holding was a femur bone. That day has never set well with me. To this day the scariest thing that has happened to me was when I was coming back from junior prom and had to stay the night at my grandma's place because I was too tired to drive 1 hour back home. They had a party going themselves and my younger cousin was there and wanted to play some video games before we went to bed. So we did and eventually went to bed. Before going to sleep I was trying to scare him by saying I could see someone standing in the dark and he started crying a bit so I stopped. So I closed my eyes for about 10 seconds when all of a sudden the lights in the room turned on. I looked at my cousin and he looked at me and we freaked. Both of us bolted out of the room and went to tell Grandma. When she went to check the light switch was turned on, which obviously I had turned off, and told us nothing was in there. We both refused to sleep in that room and we ended up sleeping on the couch. Might I add, just as a side note, my grandpa had been passed away for about 8 years at the time and he was the one I was using as the person standing in the dark. To this day I still think he is laughing at me for trying to scare my cousin and he was probably the one who switched on the light and made me scared, ha ha. I had a toilet paper roll go straight up poltergeist on me one day. It was like 8 in the evening and I went to drop off the Browns like I normally did that time of day. Well, when I went wipe the roll spun a couple times, stopped, then slowly began rolling again. It started slow at first then sped up until it looked like a kid had gotten a hold of it and was just spinning all the paper off for fun. I freaked out and grabbed it. When I did it stopped. I always feel weird telling this story because it's the least interesting haunt I've ever heard of, but it happened so I want to tell people. TLD, our toilet paper started spinning on its own whilst I was pooping, freaked me out. When I was a teenager I was walking down the main street of my city and I noticed something peculiar a little way ahead across the other side of the road. With my attention focused I saw that it was an old lady with a pram full of soft toys, wearing what appeared to be dozens of items of multicolored pieces of clothing. Her hair was tied up and she was looking directly in front of her and walking. I kept walking on my side of the road, staring at her, and without warning she turned and looked directly at me with a manic, wide-eyed, toothless open smile. Scared the shit out of me. I used to share a room with my brother. One night, we went to sleep watching TV and I wake up later and I wake up facing the wall and the clock said 4:15 a.m. The TV was still on and for some reason it was now on a church channel, so I rolled over to turn it off thinking my mom had come in to change the channel. When I roll over, there were 2 people in the room sitting at the foot of mine and my brother's beds staring at each other. The one on my bed was glowing a faint blue light and the one on my brother's bed was glowing bright white. I just knew it was a dream and I closed my eyes and woke up. When I woke up, my brother and I were alone again, but the clock said 4:15 a.m. and the TV was on the same church program. I still feel it was a dream, but it was a really wild experience and I've never forgotten the fear I felt that night. I used to drive my co-worker home on Fridays and Saturdays from the restaurant job we used to work at. The restaurant was located on the edge of town and it overlooked a river on the cliff, an old stone quarry, beautiful place. To the east was where he lived, which quickly became the country, with houses being half a mile to a mile apart. His place is situated on the edge of a big forest, about a mile up the road. So as we are driving down his long driveway we make a dip into a little culvert that has fog settled into it from the small creek that runs there. As my truck pulls out of the thick layer of fog I say to him, "Is that a fire?" At my 11 o'clock and about a 45-degree angle up from the ground we can see what looks as if someone is having a massive bonfire on a distant hill. Both he and I, knowing this area, we realize that there is no hill there and that this orange object is in the sky. Brighter, dimmer, brighter, dimmer. It's almost flickering. So we park the truck and call his GF outside to look at it. The three of us sitting on the tailgate of my truck are all enamored with this thing, and we start to realize that there are subtle movements to it, as well as the glowing. As if you were watching a search and rescue helicopter going back and forth in nothing near to a uniform route. So obviously it's not a star, it's not a plane, it's gotta be a helicopter, right? As the time passes, we must have been watching it for 30 minutes now. It is slowly getting closer and closer to us. At this point we can clearly see that it is no helicopter. There is our 3 points of light making up a triangle on one level, and then 2 other lights above it. Those changed colors. The weirdest thing was that there was 0 sound, and for how close it was, there should have been sound. And just how slow it moved. I have never gotten closure or anything close to an answer. I am very knowledgeable about civilian and military aircraft and can tell you with certainty it was not a plane, and not a helicopter.